Now I want to turn to Matthew chapter 9 because I want us to really understand how important forgiveness really is and the miracle of what it does for us. Because, see, I want us to understand it's the creator of everything. Because the Father, it's his will that this planet exists. He is willing to forgive you. Now, here's why this is so important to understand. And I think we gloss this over. Because he's the only one that can stop all the destruction in your life. Do you understand this? I mean, I can say, I forgive you, and that's good. I'm glad. I hope we can learn to forgive one another. But first, it's really remarkable to realize he forgives us. And his forgiveness stops the curse. And I want to prove it to you. Matthew chapter 9. I'm starting to read at verse 2. And behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. I want to pause before I read the rest of that verse. Was that a blessing to that man's life? You go, that guy was having an awesome life. Sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. Is that a blessing? No, it's not a blessing. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer. Thy sins be forgiven thee. What's interesting is that I think the part of this story we miss sometimes is we go, oh, the guy was healed. No, that's not the point of the story. The forgiveness of sin was the point of the story. If you can get this into your heart, that God genuinely forgives sin, and what a miracle that is. Because when he forgives you of your sin, do you realize that means it's actually gone? I mean, people can try to bring it up in your face in the future, but I'm going to tell you something that's more important. In that day, when you stand before him, it's not going to be brought up again. That's what matters. It's done. And behold, verse 3, certain of the scribes said within themselves, this man blasphemes. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, wherefore think you evil in your hearts? For whether is it easier to say, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins. Then said he to the sick of the palsy, arise, take up thy bed, and go unto thine house. Maybe part of the reason why we struggle with so much sickness in our life is because, first of all, we're not willing to forgive, and we're not willing to really trust in faith that even though the devil would come to you and say, can you really believe that God would forgive you of that thing you did? That you instead start to argue with that thought as if it's you. Instead of going, it's not about how I can rationalize. You're not me. Goodbye. See, my concern with the world today is we become so psychological in our thought process that we think that guilt is just a defective way of thinking and coping. No, guilt is an evil spirit. So if you try to rationalize your guilt away, it will never happen. It's only when you start saying, you're not me, I'm not listening to you, that you start to be free. One of the things that my wife and I were laughing about me is that I started to overcome guilt at some point, and then I started doing a lot of stuff that wasn't right in my house. Not overt things that were wrong. It was just, I didn't realize how much my conscience was really guilt. I did a lot of things that were right. Excuse me. I did a lot of things that seemed right-ish because I didn't want to feel guilty. Then when I didn't feel guilty, I started not doing those things anymore, but then I would kind of lose track of myself sometimes. So I had to actually learn to develop a real conscience, which was, here's what a real conscience is. It's not, oh boy, everybody's gonna think I'm a terrible person, or oh, God doesn't love me, and oh, I'm not gonna be able to live that one down. That's not the reason why you're gonna start doing things. A correct conscience is, I don't want to do that because that's not right. I don't want to do that because I love God and I love my family and I love people around me. That's when your conscience comes alive. It's not about the negative anymore. It's about seeing the potential for what should be and being excited about that. So you lay down sin, not because you're like, well, I don't want to feel bad later on. It's more like, no, I don't need to keep doing this because it's not fruitful for me. It's not going to make anything better in my life. Guilt and condemnation is a very bad counterfeit for the Holy Spirit. Because truthfully, I think most of the time, well, we almost have become addicted to guilt. Sometimes it's better to keep giving in so that we have something to think about rather than really moving on and addressing our life before God. But it's not, he's not holding things over on you. It's that he really wants you to forgive and be forgiven.